Shame and guilt, something that we've all experienced. Maybe some of you are watching this right now and you're experiencing it in a unique way right now. But where does it come from? Where does shame and guilt come from? See, I think you can understand a lot about things when you understand where they come from. Shame and guilt is something that goes back as early as mankind has ever walked the planet Earth. I don't know if you know this or not, but the earth was not created to experience shame and guilt. And in the Bible, we see in the book of Genesis that God made mankind in his image and in his likeness, and we were created not to experience shame and guilt. I mean, it says that mankind, Adam and Eve, the first man, the first woman, they were naked and they were unashamed. They didn't have any shame, y'all. So where did shame and guilt come from? Well, the Bible's very clear early on that Adam and Eve, they sinned against God. They rebelled against God. And when they rebelled against God, it opened this Pandora's box of problems. It released a fracture that fractured even the fabric of the soul and the spirit of mankind. And so all of the problems, all of the things that we see in the world, all of the issues, all of the evil, it all stems from this source, even shame and guilt. And what it tells us is when Adam and Eve sinned, they were confronted by God, and they were actually hiding when they were confronted by God because they saw their nakedness. Nakedness is euphemistic in the Bible for shame. It's euphemistic in the Bible for guilt. They realized that they were ashamed of something that they had done. Because they had rebelled against God, they experienced shame and guilt. And you would ask naturally, like, what is God's response to this? Like, what did he do? Did he just annihilate Adam and Eve and start over? But that's not what God does, because that's not who God is. God is holy, he is righteous, and he has standards. And so when we sin against him, it is problematic, but God is simultaneously merciful and gracious and good. So we find in Genesis chapter 3, when God confronts Adam and Eve, when they're experiencing shame and guilt, God makes a way to cover their shame in a way that would have been the foreshadowing of a greater sacrifice that would come in the Bible. See, what God does is he takes animal skins and he covers Adam and Eve's shame, because at this point Adam had sewn fig leaves together and he had tried to cover his own shame and his own doing and his own works, but it wasn't sufficient. And God said, I will not have any of your works of trying to cover up your own shame and your own guilt. I will do that for you. It insinuates that God had to kill an animal. He had to sacrifice an animal in order to cover Adam and Eve's shame. The Bible didn't tell us what kind of animal it is, but I would speculate that that animal that God killed was a lamb. And the reason why I would speculate that is because thousands of years later, God would send his son Jesus, the Lamb of God, to be sacrificed for the sins of mankind, so that you and I, who feel shame and who feel guilt, we could have God's son sacrificed for us so that we could be covered in our shame, so we could be covered in our guilt, that God would lay down the life of his son so that we could experience forgiveness, redemption, and hope. So if you're watching this and you're feeling shame, if you're watching this and you're feeling guilt, you don't have to experience that in eternity. You don't have to experience that in finality. That shame and guilt does not have to have the final word in your situation. And so would you be open to exploring with us over the next few weeks what God has to say about this really, really important thing called forgiveness, so that we could find our shame and guilt covered? Would you be willing to explore with us over the next few weeks?